I'm Tracy with KOGmissions.com, and welcome to Simple Bible Truth. I hope to encourage you in your faith and to inspire you to seek truth, to love God, and to obey Jesus. Have you ever wondered how Christians should live in a crooked and perverse society like the one that we're living in today? As each day goes by, I think it becomes harder and harder, especially for the young people. Philippians 2:14 through 16 tells us that we must be blameless and pure, children without blemish, even though we live in a crooked and perverse society. We must shine as lights in the world, holding on to the word of life, so that on the day of Christ, when Jesus returns to establish God's kingdom on the earth, that we will have been faithful servants and witnesses. Today, I want to share some simple Bible truths about the world we live in today and how we ought to live in this crooked and perverse society. And I'll be sharing some thoughts as I read through Proverbs 24. Do not envy evil people. And we must remember, whether a person is wicked or righteous, that is determined by God. The righteous obey God, and the wicked do not. It is not a matter of just being a good person. Believers must not envy the wicked today if we don't want to have what their future holds. It goes on to say, do not desire to be with them, for their hearts contemplate violence, and that is against God and his morality, and their lips speak harm to innocent children especially. They mislead them down paths that lead to death. They also rant and rave, just like the crowds chanted back in the day, "Free Barabbas," and then "Crucify him." Crucify him when they were asked what to do with Jesus. And the same thing happens when the topic of abortion comes up. They are bent on evil and death, and they shout in loud voices, proclaiming, "Kill them, kill them." By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Dear brothers and sisters, how can we expect children to grow in God's wisdom or build a house that is a life of wisdom if they only hear the foolishness of the world? They only hear one side. We have a responsibility to speak up and to speak the truth. It goes on to tell us that by knowledge, its rooms are filled with all kinds of precious and pleasing treasures. So what kind of knowledge is being pumped into the minds of not only children today, but everyone else who is on social media or watching TV shows and news programs? Today's worldview does not line up with God's worldview. The rooms of people's hearts and minds are being filled with rotting garbage, not precious and pleasing treasures. A wise warrior is strong, and a man of knowledge makes his strength stronger. And in Christ, it doesn't matter if we are male or female, that is, a woman or a man. We all must be wise, strong warriors growing in God's knowledge and the knowledge that he wants to impart to us so that our strength will become stronger, just like lifting weights or doing push-ups. It takes some work. But I would also like to comment about men in general. You know, those who have an X and a Y chromosome? So men, stand up, pull up your pants, and be the man that God created you to be. There's no shame in being a strong, godly man. Raise your sons to take responsibility for themselves and to be strong, godly men. Boys, young men, and mature men have been beaten down and emasculated for many years. The result of that happening for so many years has degraded this generation so much that men don't even know what God created a man to be or how to be that man. Girls and women have been poisoned with lies, and everyone is confused. They don't even know what a girl or a boy is. And those that do, they don't speak up. No wonder this delusion has taken root in this perverse society. Of course, there are men who have abused their God-given job of serving their family, and that doesn't change the fact, though, that God ordained them, men in general, to lead and care for their families as Christ does the church. Just because we say that men should be strong, that does not mean that we are saying that women should be weak. The world is not only trying to destroy the family, but they are trying to destroy the human race as God created it. You can be a strong yet feminine woman, just like you can be a tender yet masculine man. You don't have to change your gender just because you like something the opposite sex typically likes doing, or if you don't want to be the stereotyped person of the sex that God created you to be. A few loudmouth activists have made a mess and have made this society to become even more perverse and crooked than it already was. Although we cannot and we are not commissioned to change the world right now, we must still speak God's truths and shine his light into the darkness that is all around us. We cannot continue to sit in the darkness and not even have a tiny flashlight turned on. Fellow believers, get out a floodlight, turn it on in the little corner that God has placed you in. If we all do this, the world will have more hope of seeing the one true God and his ways that lead to life. And so now back to Proverbs, it says further, for with guidance you wage your war, and with numerous advisors there is victory. Even kings and military leaders need guidance. How much more a child or a young person? If we want children to be victorious in this life and in the life in the coming age, we must be willing to offer them guidance and teach them God's ways. Whether we offer them guidance or not, the world is guiding them to hell with a very loud voice, and it is in their face every waking moment. Of course, they can and will make their own choices, but if we do not offer them God's knowledge and share his wisdom with them, they have already lost the war. They are in a brutal war, and there is a battle for their hearts and their minds every day. Wisdom is unattainable for a fool. In court, he does not open his mouth. It is not worth arguing with a foolish person, but we must combat Satan's foolishness with God's truth. Not debating the fool, but speaking truth in opposition to his foolish words and propaganda, teaching those who will listen of God's words of truth and about his truth on the matters that are at hand. The one who plans to do evil will be called a scheming person. A foolish scheme is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to people. We must not get drawn into the scheming person's game. They are an abomination to God. We must focus not on them, but on all the little and not so little ears and eyes that must hear and see the truth compared to the many lies all around them, and especially the lies that these scheming people are spewing out day in and day out. Jesus would most likely say today, "Church, you have slacked off in the day of trouble. Your strength is small." We should be ashamed that the church has had the mute button on for so long. It is time to unmute and quit slacking off when it comes to combating the lies of this perverse society. And again, we combat them not by arguing with them, but promoting and speaking and teaching what God says is true. Deliver those being taken away to death, and hold back those slipping to slaughter. This is what we must be doing, delivering those being taken away to death and holding back those slipping away to slaughter, because that is where they are headed. If you say, "But we did not know about this," won't the one who evaluates hearts discern it? Won't the one who guards your life realize and repay each person according to his deeds, or lack of deeds, possibly? This is a stern warning to every believer. There are no excuses. The Father is watching, and he sees the hearts of his children, and he will hold us accountable. Eat honey, my child, for it is good, and honey from the honeycomb is sweet to your taste. Likewise, know that wisdom is sweet to your soul. If you have found it, you have a future, and your hope will not be cut off. We must be sharing the sweet honey of God's wisdom in the future kingdom life that has been planned for us with the young and old alike. Children and young people need to hear the message Jesus proclaimed, They need the opportunity to hear and get excited about what is coming. This hope helps us to withstand the arrows of the enemy and keeps us fighting the good fight. We should not assume that they don't want to hear what God has to say on things, that they would rather listen to the world. Indeed, a righteous person will fall 7 times and then get up again, but the guilty will collapse in calamity. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and when he stumbles, do not let your heart rejoice, lest the Lord see it and be displeased and turn away his wrath from him. We should not have our focus on those leading other people astray. And when those people who are doing that fall, we should not rejoice. God alone will bring justice on them. It is not our job now. And we must not let our hearts rejoice when they are brought low. We should be busy with what we have been given to do and not worry about them. Do not fret because of evil people. And remember that greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. So do not worry and do not fear evil people, or be envious of wicked people. Do not covet and long for what they have, even if they are good things. If they have big ministries or lots of money or are well known, we do not need to desire what they have and covet that. It is better to have a crust of bread with a few righteous brethren than a feast with the wicked. We must be faithful with what God has given us and entrusted us with, no matter how big or small it is. Helping one soul find the way, the truth, and the life is more valuable in God's eyes than getting millions to follow you in the other direction, or on social media for that matter. For the evil person has no future, and the lamp of the wicked will be extinguished. The believer must know and accept this and not waste his time worrying about the details of these evil people. Rather, he must get busy keeping his lamp filled with oil and shining God's light into the darkness. Fear the Lord, my child, as well as the king, and do not associate with rebels, for suddenly their destruction will overtake them. And who knows the ruinous judgment both the Lord and the king can bring. Fear Yahweh, and know that the world's leaders can also pronounce judgment. Of course, Yahweh's judgment is always righteous, and the world's may not always be, but they still do have their power until Jesus comes. In either case, do not associate with rebels. In the end, destruction will overtake them. You can't outrun the consequences of sin. And on the other hand, we must be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. We must stand in truth and be willing to suffer even at the hands of our governments if they stand in opposition to the Father and his anointed Messiah. These sayings are also from the wise. To show partiality in judgment is terrible. The one who says to the guilty, "You are innocent," peoples will curse him and nations will denounce him. But there will be delight for those who convict the guilty, and a pleasing blessing will come on them. When we judge, we must speak judgment righteously. It must be God's judgment. We do not pronounce our own judgment, but we speak God's judgment. In the end, the guilty will reap what they have sown, even if the world screams day and night that they are righteous and are not guilty. It is evil to pronounce the innocent guilty, and even worse to say or post or tweet that the guilty are innocent. We must call evil what it is, evil, and proclaim what is good and right. By keeping silent, we betray this duty. Like a kiss on the lips is the one who gives an honest answer. Speak truth in all matters, not just in how many is God or other important teachings like that, but in all things. It is not being political to let people know that being politically correct can lead to death and destruction. It is about God's morality, not the world's correctness. Establish your work outside and get your fields ready. Afterwards, build your house. Church, Don't be so inward focused and selfish. The fields are white. Church buildings are not a bad thing, and we don't need to, though, be like the Joneses, as they say. We must be good stewards with what we have been given. Do you really need new chairs and more additions? Or might those funds be better used for God's kingdom by investing them in God's kingdom work and reaching the lost? Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, and do not deceive with your words. Do not say, I will do to him as he has done to me. I will pay him back according to what he has done. Again, don't lie and never repay evil with evil, but overcome evil with good. Words are powerful and can bring life, and they can breathe life into a person, or they can lead to death, and they can lead people to destruction. They can encourage or they can tear down. I passed by the field of the sluggard, by the vineyard of the one who lacks sense. I saw that thorns had grown up all over it. The ground was covered with weeds, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I scrutinized it. I was putting my mind to it. I saw, and I took a lesson. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to relax, and your poverty will come like a bandit, and your need like an armed robber. This is a great illustration. I shared it with my children often when they were young. But not only can we imagine this scene in our mind when thinking about a lazy person, we should also consider it in regards to us as a believer and as a church as the whole. We must not be a sluggard when it comes to God's kingdom work in the fields today. We must evaluate our vineyards and see if there are grapes hanging on the vines or if there are just weeds and thorns. Is our fence standing strong, or has it been broken down by this perverse society? Go to the grave with God's riches before you. Don't let inactivity make you poor or laziness rob you of your reward. We must scrutinize these things and put our mind to them. We must learn a lesson and wake up from our sleep. Now is not the time to fold our hands and rest and relax. Let the coroner do that once you are gone. You can rest then until the trumpet sounds. So how should a Christian live in this crooked and perverse society? Live a life of obedience to the Father, not the father of lies. Turn the light on, even if it costs you something. Do not compromise or be tempted by or fall prey to the lies of evil schemers. Shine his light into the darkness of this perverse society. May the Father and God of our Lord Jesus Messiah be your strength and your shield as you seek truth, as you love God, and as you strive to obey Jesus.